keep going. I was meant to record it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start over. No. And that's the story about Aaron. Let's never speak of him again. So I often have given a lot of talks. Oh, also, I wrote a book with my good friend Gary Fellison on Mount Everest called Mount Everest, Confessions of an Amateur Peak Bagger. And I think it came out pretty well because it really gives an idea of sort of a normal person climbing Everest, not Ed Viesturs or some crazy god or anything. So you'll see that's the true story, warts and all, of me getting my butt kicked quite a bit there, and from hemorrhoids to pneumonia to all kinds of maladies, and also great happiness, and enjoyed the trip. And you'll meet some of my friends here from Everest as well. So I call this Dream Big, Dare to Fail. I stole it for some famous guy who's in Antarctica because it's cool. I like it. And that's actually me on the summit of Mount Vinson, very happy, very cold. So I give speeches a lot of time or talks quite often to people who are not climbers. And so I'd like to start with this really cheesy stock photo of a doctor here and to talk about PDD with people, which is maybe it's kind of silly, but if you know what that stands for? Of course not, I made it up. It's for passion deficit disorder. So you talked about people. You guys, we all obviously have a passion for the outdoors. And then they do a little thing. This is a nice quote. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who come alive. And it talks a lot about passion, and I really like that quote. And then I like this little formula, which is P plus P plus P equals P, which of course is, and you'll find this out soon, passion plus persistence plus pain equals pleasure. So that seems to happen a lot in the mountain, you know. You really got to love it. You got to be stupid and persistent to want to do it, and then you're going to endure pain. Aaron, I hope it's not as cold on Antarctica as it was for us. It was unusually cold, but regardless, it's going to be freaking cold.
You're not a math guy, are you?
No, not really. So this is my little journey on some of the 7 summits.
Summit of Mount McKinley!
But without Everest, because normally it's an Everest thing.
Well
So.
done.
This was 98 for
The
Keeley.
sun is not yet up. Above us, the moon is a crescent shape. We've taken the view. It's exquisite. All of East Africa in its pre-dawn glory.
So just thought we'd take a little trip around the world.
Gorgeous day. It's about 10 after 3 on top of Aconcagua, highest mountain in the Western Hemisphere.
And then go to Russia.
Panoramic from the summit of Mount Elbrus, highest mountain in Europe. Right now, its twin peak is coming into view there. It's about 20 meters lower than Elbrus proper.
And then this is just a little bit of a tease on Vinson. Out of crunching snow. We'll see a lot more of this. And there's that happy summit photo. And I would show you pictures from Everest, except my summit photos suck. So this is Aaron will be landing on the ice in a big plane like that. And that's my wife Maggie. She went, some people do Australia for the 7th summit. Sure, we brought champagne on the mountain. And then we'll talk a bunch about Carstensz Pyramid in Papua. And everyone loves the Tyrolean Traverse. That's me. It's good, trusting kind of place. And I never really intended to go to Carstensz Pyramid, but had an opportunity to do so with some friends who'd been on Everest and Antarctica.
Show me 7 fingers.
Well, we'll make it 8.
Yeah.
So that's a quick little trip around the world. The reason the photo that I started with, it's like the hero shot, holding your ice axe, victorious, right? On Vinson. And I'm happy, and it's a great day. My one on Everest, if you saw me, my lips are blue, and it's just the worst summit photo ever. But I had pneumonia, so it was, which I would come to find out later, which made for a really long descent. But we're going to talk more about Mount Vinson in Antarctica. It's a bluebird day, and one of the great things about the mountains, as you all, I think, know, is the great camaraderie you have with your friends. This is my buddy Brian Sheedy, who's originally from Syracuse, but now is the outdoor director at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, and he's, I think, 2-time summit Everest and bunch on Denali. He guides some. He's just an awesome guy. You couldn't ask for a better partner. On my second trip on Everest, he and I did every single rotation together, and he's just awesome. So that's pretty good. So this is us at the airport. This will be you soon. You have to dress up because you're going from Punta Arenas, the southern tip of, surprisingly, there are no direct flights to the Antarctica from Rochester. So you got to go through a lot of different areas. But you end up in Punta Arenas, and the weather has to be perfect. It's about a 4.5-hour flight there, and obviously no refueling on the ice, and that's what they call the continent the ice, so you fly onto the ice. So we're in our gear ready to go. And this guy, Dale, well, I would say, let's see, Dan Barter and Brian, he and I were on Everest together, the three of us, but there's another, you'll meet some more too. So this is the plane you get on. It's an old ex-Russian military cargo jet that I made friends with the pilots. I'm a pilot, and so I took some photos of them landing, and I sent it to them later because they nailed the landing on the ice when they came back to get us. That was later. So inside it's pretty Spartan, it's the cargo type thing, and we're hanging out, and about a 4.5-hour flight, like I said. And then you land on the ice, and you saw a little bit of video of that landing on the ice, and that's really cool because you can't see out the plane. There's no windows, it's a cargo plane, so all of a sudden you hit the crunchy runway. So it's a beautiful day. So this guy, I wasn't on Everest with him, Jim, but he's from New Hampshire, but he's also an Everest summiteer. We're very happy. And then these planes, once you get on the ice at camp, we were at Patriot Hills. I don't know, do they still fly into Patriot Hills? So from Patriot Hills, come in if you'd like. Hi, how are you? So from Patriot Hills, you take these little planes here to base camp. And Antarctica is the highest, driest, windiest, coldest continent on the Earth, on average. So it's a trip to just get to the ice. And one of the things they say about Antarctica is that it's as close as you can come to leaving the planet without actually leaving the planet. And so that makes it, I think, pretty desirable if you have the opportunity to go. And it's one of the more expensive plane tickets you're going to have. But when you get there, it's cool. So this is base camp on Vinson. And there's basically, we fly in, base camp's at about 7,000 feet. And then there's 2 more camps. There's the middle camp, which is about 10,000 feet. High camp is like 13, and the summit itself is about 16 and change. I forget exactly what, but something like that. And it's beautiful. It's rare to see much. It rarely snows, but it can be really cold. Like I said, it was unusually cold. I went with Phil Ursler, was a guide from International Mountain Guides who I was on Everest with and in Russia, and I love the guy, and he'd been there a bunch of times, and he's like, it's not that bad. And then on this trip he goes, oh man, this is really awful. It was only this cold one other time in my 12 trips here. I'm like, thanks, Phil. Yeah.
So, I mean, how cold is it? It doesn't look particularly cold there.
Here, well, again, it's the difference between 7,000 and 16,000 feet in temperature can make a big difference. And of course, I went right about this time of the year when I went, and the sun never quite sets. And it looks like about 2 hours or so before sunset and just goes around the sky. And so sometimes when it goes behind mountains or whatnot, it gets quite a bit colder. I would say here it's about maybe 5 below-ish. So not super cold, but not real warm either. And this is our setting up our base camp. And then it's a lot of humping of loads. Like a lot of expeditions, it's like carry a bunch of stuff up to your first camp, cache it in the snow, although there's no gorax or crows or ravens to get at it because there's no animal life on Antarctica. Nothing lives there on the interior part, so didn't have to be that careful. So you lug in loads, pretty normal stuff, and heavy because there's a lot of winter gear and climbing gear. And it's so cool because you look over here, and even though there's some clouds, and it looks like there's clouds way over there, but it's not really clouds, it's just freaking ice for as long as you can see. It's spectacularly beautiful and kind of haunting and mesmerizing, I think. There's another shot of it, and it almost looks, I mean, it is kind of a desert, but a frozen desert. And of course we're making snow walls on your tent, pretty common stuff on Denali and lots of other mountains like that. And that's Phil Urschler. And I wore that hat that's a lucky hat. There's a chapter in my book about that hat exclusively. But Phil Urschler is one of my heroes and just a really awesome guy. That's our little cook tent down there. We're hanging out. So as typical on expedition-y type things, there's often a lot of downtime after you've cached food and done all that other kind of stuff. So this was Thanksgiving where we spent, and that's a strip steak, but we didn't really bring that. It was another group. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Wally Bird, but he runs some adventures, and he had a couple clients, and one of them had frostbite, and they just weren't having a great trip, and they left, and so we got to pilfer some of their better food, which was that steak on Thanksgiving. See this hat? This is from the Wapiti Woolies. It's part of the Happy Humpers series. If you look carefully, you'll see those frisky caribou or whatever. So,
What are they doing, Kevin?
I think they're enjoying it. They're staying warm, apparently. And but that is a magical hat. He lent it to me when I was my second trip on Everest. He and his wife got up the trip before that I didn't make it. So I had a Wapiti Woolies hat, and he didn't think it was that masculine. So he gave me that hat because it had better summit karma. And so I summited in that hat, and I ended up dry cleaning it and sending it back to him. And that's why he's wearing it. The other guy is Jason Tangway, his assistant guide. But Jason worked as a guide on the Everest trip that I was on in 2004. But Jason, Brian, Dan, and I worked together as a team, and he wasn't officially a Western guide, but he was helping with the logistics. But that guy is really total badass. On one trip, I think in 2001, he lost the summit of Everest on the north side because they helped. There were 3 climbers who were in grave danger. One of them passed, but the other 2 got down, and he received a prestigious award along with 3 other guys. So he's the kind of guy you want in your corner. He's a dentist now. And of course, there's playing cards. We played a lot of hearts, And then things get crazy. This was really cold. This is at Camp 2. It is minus 20 below at least. This guy's name's Jim Gagne. And Jim is not completely righteous. He's a little bit goofy. And maybe it was the altitude that affected his mind and his reasoning, but he thought it would be a funny photo op to do. But you do stupid things on the mountains when you have extra time. We also did that kind of thing where you boil water and you throw it up in the atmosphere and it instantly... but stupidly, we didn't take pictures. Here's our little latrine, so you talk about pain. Going out there at 30 below, that's, no newspapers. So... And it's cold. That, of course, is me. One of the great inventions is a buff. Just keeping warm in the tent. You're just screwing around a little bit. So I got another hat. It wasn't as good as his hat, but it's part of the Happy Humpers series as well. Silly. And then this is us starting to go up the head wall. So we left 10,000 feet. We're making our way up, and it's not super steep. And I think they've got a fixed line on it now. They didn't used to. And there's a little crevasse danger. This mountain is not a super hard mountain to climb. If you get decent weather, it should be a pretty straightforward, but there still are crevasses and other problems, and it's still work. It's still 16,000 feet and change in bitterly cold temperatures. That's another look at the head wall. Making our way up. That's Urschler. Is that Urschler? Yeah, it is. So it's the kind of thing where even though it's probably 20 below, if it's not windy, you get warmed up a little bit in a baffled down suit. And this is us just approaching our high camp, the last little bit. But again, this looks like it's clouds and stuff, but it's just all ice. It's just crazy. That's our high camp set up. This is us getting ready to go. It was minus 32 below when we were headed for the summit. The coldest it got actually was at our second camp at 10,000 feet, where it hit minus 40. and that was. But I've been in minus 40 in the Adirondacks, and that's cold too. It's probably colder because it's more moisture-y feeling. I don't know. So like I told Aaron, I sweat a lot. So at a little rest break here, a little bit of hair that I had, I got a little frosting with it, and you get cold pretty quick. It's you're warmed up, and we were lucky on our summit day. It's really blue skies, but the winds were under 10 miles an hour. So even though it was really quite cold, it was okay. Making our way up, we're happy. Getting further up, getting pretty close to the top. And our summit day, it was probably about 12 hours, from top to bottom. And we went at the pace of the slowest person. There was one guy in our group who was not a super accomplished climber. Not that I'm super fast anyways, but Phil Ursler is always really good about trying to get everyone up there, and we had lots of time, we had good weather, so everyone behaves and plays nicely and supports each other. We had just a terrific group of folks. That's us approaching the summit. That'll be you in about, 10, 12 days, 14 days, do you hope? You're going to love it. And then this is our summit shot. So real happy, really cold. So Ursler, first American to do the north face of Everest, and he also did Kanchenjunga. I mean, this is back in the early 80s when he really was a pioneer kind of guy, so he's awesome. And of these folks, this was our 6th summit of the 7 summits, so basically the only thing that was left was either Australia or Carstensz pyramid. So once we got here, we knew we were home free. So this was my 6th, this was Jason's 6th, this was Dan's 6th, Jim's 6th, Dale Darling, who I didn't climb on Everest with, but he had done I think he was on the same year of Everest, but on the north side. And Brian Cheedy, that was his 6th as well. And then this other guy just was he was along for the ride. He was a really nice guy, and this was probably the biggest thing he's ever done, and enjoyed it. But cold, beautiful summit day. Then we get back to base camp. Our planes are there, and you're going to get going home pretty soon. And it was a little bit warmer by the time we got down to 7,000 feet and all this. And our total duration on the mountain was probably 11 or 12 days, I want to guess. So everything worked really great. Here's the other thing. Ursler told us is you're going to fly out, but in Punta Arenas, you have to be on a 3-hour watch. When the weather's good, you got to be ready to go. And it could be days before the weather's just perfect, and same thing when you're leaving. So even though your itinerary says you're going to depart on November 18th and return on December 2nd or whatever it is, that never, ever happens. Well, we departed on the date we were supposed to depart, and we left and for the ice on the date we were supposed to. So it's ridiculously lucky.
It's my understanding that the windshields ice up in the planes.
I was in
one of the dangers.
I was in the plane, and I didn't because I had on the way in when they landed, I shot video of them and they just beautiful landing. And so I told the pilots, and there was 2 pilots and an engineer, that I had this, and I showed them on my little thing like that, little viewfinder. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I'm like, oh, I'm a pilot. So they let me hang out in there, and the windshields were fine. I mean, they were in super clear air, and I was hanging out at this lower part, looking out, and as we left the continent over the shelf. So that was pretty nice that they let me do it. So back at base camp, one of the cool things is when you're done, this is Boxo wine, but it's actually pretty good wine. Chile has some pretty decent wine. So we have wine in our deal there, and we're smoking cigars because we're just idiots, and it makes for a good photo. And it was in Cigar Aficionado too. So. All right, so that was Vinson. Any questions? You're going to freeze your butt off, Aaron, but you love it. It'll be awesome. And if you can go, you should go. Sell your house, your car, do whatever it takes to go. That's what they say. That's not my expression.
The that came in.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to let them know there's coffee and tea over there, and there's cookies in the middle of the table.
Thank you,
So
sir.
help yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
When you were down there, did you experience something like sensory deprivation because it's all just white?
No, because and that could have happened. And actually, in the presidential range in Mount Washington, it's been closer to that in that area where we were just in a whiteout and fog and snow, and you don't know if your next step is up, down, or sideways kind of thing. So experienced that, and that's being a pilot. I'm also instrument rated, so it's kind of like flying in the clouds. You have to trust your instruments. So not there in Antarctica, but in other places when it's just a total whiteout. I mean, not like losing or whatever, but it's disconcerting and kind of
Even
odd.
though you've been on the mountain for, what do you say, 11 days?
Yeah, not really.
Really an issue?
Nah.
Did you have a regular schedule with the sun never going down? Did you sleep at 10 o'clock or what have you?
People ask about that. I'm generally a pretty good sleeper, and I had some bizarro but awesome dreams. You basically try and sleep and stay in your sleeping bag when it's the coldest part of the day, even though that may be more of a night, but there's no night. We don't bring flashlights, we don't have those kinds of things. But we would track the sun, and so at least at the 10,000 foot camp, there's probably a good amount of time where it was behind mountains, and it was really cold. And it's funny, it comes around when the sun's on it, even though the ambient air temperature might be 10 or 15 below. If it hits the sun at the tent, and it can warm up the tent and not feel so bad. Like, you know how you never get warm in the Adirondacks or the Whites or something when it's the middle of winter? That's not always the case in higher altitude type stuff.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
see penguins or anything?
Penguinos? No. I'm bitter. But we wouldn't have seen penguins anyways from where we were. You'd have to be closer to the coast. But no, basically nothing grows there except around the edges a little bit. There's some life.
A lot of the pictures when you guys were posing, you had exposed skin, not here, but like on the summit, because everyone was 40, so you guys just like take your gloves off for a second, then...
Yeah, like my gloves off here. I mean, had the wind been up, and I don't know what the temperature was on the summit exactly. I know it was 32 below when we left, but I bet you it was probably 20 below, but almost no wind. I mean, really a bluebird day,
The sun
so
really made a big difference.
a huge difference.
What time is it there in that picture?
I want to say early afternoon, maybe. I mean, it sort of doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, I mean, it kind of does if you're going to be blocked by the sun, but once you get up or blocked by mountains or something, but once you get pretty high up, you're usually not in the shade too much.
So nobody had any frostbite over there.
No, but we did see the guy where we stole the nice New York strip steak. This guy from Ireland had, not only did he cut his thumb, but he also had frostbite on his thumb.
I think
A
it was
little
mostly
bit.
because of the injury.
Pardon me?
I think the injury probably...
Yeah, and the other guy he was with, Wally Berg, he had 2 clients with him, and the other guy had maybe an appendectomy or something like that 3 or 4 or 5 weeks earlier, so he wasn't feeling quite great, so bummer to go all that way, right?
Well,
You get what you get. The mountains don't really guarantee. You hope for the best, and you hope to come back home with all your digits and whatnot. So, I have really gross pictures of the guy stitching up his thumb. So, anyways, more questions on Antarctica?
Did you have like any kind of like mental exhaustion at some point, especially with the long waiting times, and how do you actually like deal with that?
That's a really great question, and I think that's for on a mountain like Vinson wasn't as bad because we knew it was going to go. We were not able to summit on the day we wanted to summit because the winds were up a little bit. So you wait, you play cards. It really helps to have great camaraderie with your teammates because you're going to spend a lot of time in tents and